Understanding the problem. Uh, Clarification of the specification. To take this into consideration of the different aspects on and how complicated or simple the software for targeted audience. Clarification is how clear of an understanding does a person have to the problem. Specifications is the specific parts towards the problem. Combined together, it isn't essential means how clear of an understanding does a person have towards the specific parts of the presented problem. This includes the inputs and outputs, so what is going to be the controller that the player is going to use and the codes that are going to be processed when the controls have been moved to display an output. For example, the player presses up the button, then code that has been written for action processes and moves the character on screen to move up the output that is displayed. User interface is another as the user uses the interface to navigate across the platform. The clarification for this is how easy is the screen for the user to see and how they can distinguish what each button does. Performance requirements. After clarification, performance requirements such as relevant materials, components, design factor, construction methods, all play a part in the performance requirements.
Identification of inputs and required outputs. Inputs and outputs are important, and the planning of which ones to use is crucial for the program. Inputs include buttons, text fields, and other user interactable content. The input for a programmer would be something that the end user does to make the program then do something. For example, they could press a button that takes them to another window. The output of this scenario would be that the other window appears for the end user to then use. Outputs include text displays, creation of files, and generation of images. Determining the steps that solve problems. Before making a program or application, you need to figure out what kind of problem the application will be solving and what you'll need to do to ensure that the problem is then fixed. To do this, you must know the problem, understand the different fixes for the problem, and find steps that will then solve the problem. All of this combined together will give you the basic design for your application and will allow for you to understand exactly what your application will need to achieve.
The Import Process Output IPO is a widely used approaching system and analysts and software engineering for describing the structure of an important process program. An IPO records the input processes and output processes. An IPO diagram includes all of the materials, information required for the process. Details for the process itself, and descriptions of all products and byproducts resulting from the processes. An IPO diagram should include all the materials, information required, details of the process, description of all products and byproducts. This would be an ideal IPO program.
Go back a slide. That slide doesn't work for programming. No. Go back, show the diagram again. That diagram doesn't work for programming. That's an IPO for recruitment. So please be careful when you go and find your images. Can you put that phone back?
Okay.
Inputs and outputs required for a particular problem. When one is confronted with a programming problem, to properly address the problem, one must identify all of the inputs and outputs required for that program. Inputs are processed by the program, which then create the outputs. For example, If you had a program that wanted to add 3 numbers together, the inputs would be the 3 numbers that you want added together. The process would be that the 3 numbers are added together, and then the outputs would be the 3 numbers combined. An IPO diagram from a set of specifications. When you're given a set of specifications, you have to figure out, well, when you're given a set of specifications, these will generally include the input and outputs for what you're going to need for this problem. Once you have these, you can use them to create an IPO chart, which displays your input and output, but it also shows the process. The process is how the inputs are going to be processed before they become the outputs. And that's it.